Hey everyone, it's me Lisa and I'm coming at you with another video. Today we are reviewing If We Were Villains. I have quite a bit to say about it and it's mostly complaints. To explain the plot a little bit, we start in jail. This guy has committed a murder. He's coming out and he is about to explain everything that actually happened and the reason why he is in jail, even though he wasn't the one committing the murder. So that is obvious from the beginning, and then we go back in time when he was studying in a theatre school and all of this history behind the murder, everything that happened, how he discovered it, and all of the dynamics between the group of friends that he's part of. I'm trying to look as similar as yesterday as I could. Yesterday the battery ran out and here we are getting back on track with the plot. Oliver is blamed, he is getting out of prison and now he's gonna tell everything to everyone, and the whole story tracks on the fact that they are expressing what happens after this event. The reason why everything falls apart is because at the beginning they witness Richard in the water and he's not dead. They didn't cause it, but they see him. And because in the previous weeks from what happened, he was very jealous, bullying people, he almost drowned one of the other members of the group and literally they have to scratch him off of him and he is barely conscious after he regains the ability to breathe, and they don't want to save him because he has been causing them so much trouble. They don't go and call for help, and this causes them to implicitly obviously feel guilty because they to some extent are. That end up destroying the dynamics of the group and how they react and what happens afterwards. So I thought that that was interesting, and the whole story, as I said, this exploration of what happened where they have to live with the reality of that massive event happening at the beginning of their school year. They go on, the investigation is brought forward, but they need to move on with their life and go on in some way. And we don't know who the actual murderer is, but we know it's not Oliver. So we know that everything happens and he takes the blame and we don't know why. The whole story was nice-ish to read. There is in the author's bio the fact that she studied Shakespeare, and we for certain can feel that in every inch of this book. We see it all over the place play an important role in the narration because they express emotions and things unveil as the various plays go. The way they act is very helpful for them to unravel things and understand how they actually went, especially for Oliver. I found, especially when we talk about characters, that the group was really diminished. I think that the whole focus was put mainly on Meredith, Oliver, Richard, James, and maybe Alexander. And I don't know if it's because Oliver is going through a superiority complex or what is happening, but I felt that I really didn't have a feel for the rest of the characters. I'm so sorry, I need to read all of the names. History of my life, I cannot remember a name, even though I finished the books like 2 days ago. Philippa is always the one that is feeling grounded, the one that knows. And that is her character. Frederick, Gwendolyn, Joseph, and Camillo. So a whole bunch of people that I really cannot remember much on and off. The rest of the characters, I felt that they came in and out but didn't really stick much, and that was a shame. And I'm gonna spoil it later, so I will tell you when I spoil it, but I thought that when we go into the story, I've seen certain descriptions of the dark academia here is very strong. So if you love hardcore dark academia, that's 100% it. And I felt that that was a bit iffy. I did graduate in English literature. I did study Shakespeare to some degree. I have knowledge of the English language, so I did do all of that, and still that felt a bit excessive for me, even if generally I really like Shakespeare. I read Hamlet and I went into the whole investigation about the Hamlet story. There is a lot of Shakespearean reference all over the place and I really like it, but that felt a bit excessive for me. I think that maybe it tells more about me and the fact that I'm not really a fan of the dark academia genre as a whole. I'll put it out there because you need to know that that is happening basically every other page. This is also the way that Oliver remains sane when he is in jail. He just goes through verses and verses and verses. Oh, it's a bit much. The writing quality wise, I think that when they repeat the names of the characters too many times, it's jarring. It tells me that there wasn't too much revision going on. And when there is a group, I understand that it might be more helpful, but there are instances where I read battles, I read other stories where the names of the character wasn't repeated every single sentence, and therefore it didn't feel jarring for me. Whereas in this book, if I noted it down, it means there was a bit too much presence of names all over the place. When it comes down to the evolution of the story, there was a pretty hefty length of time where it could have been shortened, especially in the second half of the book. There was a lot of back and forth when Oliver was trying to figure out how everything had happened that felt a bit meaningless. And then by the end, when we actually get the full reveal of the story, it just goes into the nonsensical, and that's why I gave it 3 stars. Oliver, let's talk about him as a character. He is totally dreadful, and I have so many reasons why he is dreadful, but the first point is that his main character energy is excessive, and he demonstrates that in the resolution of the plot, so the ending, and also in the way that he treats his family. Something that struck me about this novel was the presence of an eating disorder that in this case I think it was just thrown in there just for the clicks, if you know what I mean. It didn't need to be there. Or maybe the only reason why they put it in there was just to show how careless and stupid and annoying Oliver was as a character. I don't know if we need to root for him by the end, because I assume we do, but I really couldn't. I couldn't care less if he went into jail. My gosh, he did deserve all of that. Because there is a section of the story after all of the Richard thing happened, some time has passed, they're still all processing, and his sister is going through an eating disorder. His family is dysfunctional, it's not good. Therefore, he goes home and witnesses all of the fighting that happens around eating disorders, which is a pretty common and real dynamic. But instead of being sympathetic toward the sister, instead of understanding, instead of being like, okay, if her medical bills are going to be super high, I do understand, he is so upset that he won't be able to be funded to pursue his studies. You know, studying nowadays is considered so much as something that parents need to give out, but not every parent is able to give it out. And I think that studying needs always to be considered as what it is, which is a privilege, because in the past people didn't study not only because they didn't want to, but specifically because their parents weren't able to finance them. People needed to go to work because they weren't able to pay for their studies, and they weren't able to afford the fact of not working for a long time. And this is what is happening. He is in a university studying his dream job, acting, everything good, but at the same time he is in a very privileged position, and his family is making the choice that is, in my opinion, the sensible choice to care about this sibling that is going through getting into an eating disorder. And if you know anything about eating disorders, the sooner you catch them, the better. Because if you are into an eating disorder for a long time, it becomes likelier and likelier that you won't be cured, because your brain, everything in your habits revolves around this eating disorder. So there isn't really a possibility of getting out of it unscathed. And this is where you get into the severe and enduring, and it's a whole other topic. But just to say, they are willing to do a good thing, to send her into treatment, to help to save her when they still have time. And he just steps out on her and leaves and just goes to one of his friends' houses, and then that doesn't get picked up. They just refer to her as this annoying brat that is just not eating, and it's so upsetting to me, okay? I hate it to the core, because people that are into those situations are normally screaming for help. They don't want to just be doing that for nothing. The fact that people choose not to eat, you can call it lifestyle, you can call it what you want, but as a way of going forward, it tells you that there's something wrong, and be it at the brain level, be it at a behavioral level, it needs to be treated. After that section, I was literally not giving a damn about this character at all. I couldn't care less, but I still went on because obviously you want to know what happened, and in what happened, they lost me, because the evolution of this whole story is what tells me that he really didn't grow one bit from the beginning. He didn't understand how self-centered all of this was becoming, and his actions affect other people in ways that end up being fatal. So what happens, and this is major spoilers now, so if you didn't really don't want to hear it, go ahead, skip it. When he discovers who has actually killed Richard, James was drowned by Richard at the beginning of the year, and he was almost killed. Richard was this person that constantly got onto people's nerves and constantly instigated them to fight. And he was alone with James, instigated him into a fight, and they were near the lake, making it very, very scary for James, because he would have been in a situation where if he fell into the water, or if he got pushed into the water and Richard, that was bigger than him, wanted to drown him, he could have without issues. And they were alone, so there was no protection for him, and he kept being instigated. And at some point he falls over, grabs a hook, and just hits Richard in the head with it. So that is what happens. It's, in my opinion, quite justified, because the fear is real. Richard at that point was very intoxicated, very drunk, so he wasn't into his right mind, and what he did was extremely violent. We knew from his story he was absolutely violent, and therefore I think that at that point that could have been seen as self-defense. To that point. After that point, we have him being super afraid, and then when the others join and see all of that, everyone is terrified. They don't want to save Richard, and they let him be inside the water. So when James discovers all of that, the problematic things become how he reacts, because as I said, the fear can be understood, and I think that James's actions, in my mind, were not the absolute worst, because he was instigated into doing it. He shouldn't have done it, but he didn't actually kill Richard. He was acting in self-defense, acting in a way that he wanted to prevent his own death by striking first, which makes sense. When Oliver discovers that, he discovers that he had been hiding to himself the fact that he was really into James, and there was a lot of active banter in between them, and he decides to go in, confess to the murder after he discovers where the hook has been hidden. He takes the murder weapon, hides it in another place where he can direct investigators to, and blame it all on himself. So at that point, they would have had a confession, and they would have had someone else go in to tell the detective that James had been the culprit. He understands that, he knows, and he prevents all of that by making a confession. And therefore, the prosecutors don't have any grounds to actually say, no, actually it didn't go like that, because he was confessing. He was willingly going into prison for this murder. And that is, in itself, you can consider it a selfless, romantic act. But what it fails to consider, in my opinion, is how James actually felt about it. Because what ends up happening is that he ends up killing himself. So he ends up ending his own life because guilt is eating him up alive. And that is something that as a partner, if you're so close to someone, you should will for. I understand that sometimes people really want to protect other people from the consequences of their own actions, but in this case, James is already going through it. He has changed so much. He wants to die at that point. He is feeling so guilty. He was so close to confessing it all, and Oliver swoops in as his knight in shining armor and wants to make it all right. And what that does is make it all worse, because he spends 10 years in prison, botches up his own future career for a lover that then ends up committing suicide because he is unable to bear it. So that made me hate Oliver so much as a character, and the overall book, I couldn't give it more than 3 stars because of that reason, because the main character is so insensitive towards everyone else around him, and made me really, really dislike everything about the book because of it. Everyone else is tolerable, but they are not meaningful enough, in my opinion, to make me disregard that feeling that I had about Oliver and his way of acting and everything. And also, I just have to say that when people portray eating disorders in books in ways that are so gratuitous, it's like nails on a chalkboard. I cannot bear it, because being someone that knows how that feels and know how people react, being that insensitive in literature and media is what then makes people think in real life that, oh yeah, people with an eating disorder are just not hungry, or any dumb shit like that. And I'm sorry, I don't need to curse, but it just makes me so riled up. This book for me is a okay average. If you love Shakespeare, if you love all of the investigation, if you love a lot of useless back and forths, I think that you're gonna like it very much. When it comes down to the substance of it, I just cannot go past the faults of the main character. I understand it all. I understand the falling out of the whole group, all of those dynamics, but it's not strong enough for me as a character evolution to make me actually want to root for them, because by the end he gets out of prison, and for me he should have, I don't know, stayed there, or not really having gone off scot-free when the person that he was trying to protect is actually dead because of his own actions. Doesn't justify it. So overall, I hope that you enjoyed my review. This is my honest review of this book. Everything else for me was inconsequential when compared to those 2 aspects, and that's what brought the book down for me completely. So I have nothing else to say. If you have other aspects of this book that you thought were meaningful, you can write them down below and I can comment on them. So I hope you enjoyed this review, guys, and I really hope that if you did, you will be willing to stick around, watch some other videos, and we will see each other in the next one. Bye, guys!